The general consensus around Phase 4 of the MCU, at least on the internet, is that Marvel fell off plus L plus ratio. Now, I've enjoyed it for the most part. Even projects like She-Hulk, Eternals, and Thor Love and Thunder that everyone else seems to hate. But I will agree that there has been an overall drop in quality from the previous phases. So what happened? Well, I disagree with some of the explanations going around. First of all, I don't think it has anything to do with them going woke or whatever. Wokeness is never going to be the issue with a bad movie or TV show. Bad writing, cinematography, acting, directing, visual effects, whatever, etc., is going to make a project bad. It's all about execution. Morbius isn't especially woke, and it's terrible. The Harley Quinn animated show, on the other hand, is overtly woke, and it's fantastic. I find it troubling that because bad progressive content exists, there's a good amount of people that are calling for progressive content to stop being made altogether. There's an inherent backlash to a She-Hulk show that talks about women's issues. There's an inherent backlash to a Falcon and the Winter Soldier show that deals with black issue and explores what it means to be a black Captain America. Now, if you watch one of these projects and just think it's poorly made, that's fine. But you don't need to be inherently against woke stuff and actively campaign against the very notion of it. Then there's the criticism that the universe has no direction. In the Infinity Saga, we knew that it was all leading to Thanos finding all the Infinity Stones. But that's not what made the first phase work. We had solo Iron Man, Thor, Hulk, and Captain America movies before the Avengers. And those weren't popular because they were interconnected. The most interconnectivity that they had were quick post-credit scenes and nods that these characters are living in the same world. What really made them successful is that they were just good movies that people enjoyed watching. And as we got further into the saga and movies became more overtly interconnected, the quality of the films are still what made them ultimately successful. The Avengers doesn't work as well if the characters don't have great chemistry and Loki isn't a compelling villain. Civil War doesn't work nearly as well if the conflict between Tony and Steve isn't so heartbreaking to watch. If we didn't care about any of these characters, we wouldn't have cried over their deaths in Infinity War and cheered during their return in Endgame. The narratives being told were first and foremost compelling. Don't get me wrong, movies tying into one another and being interconnected is cool. Seeing characters that you meet in solo movies come together is fun, but at the end of the day, they need to be good movies. I personally have found the standalone nature of Phase 4 to be kind of refreshing. I like that you can watch Eternals, Shang-Chi, and Moon Knight without seeing any other movie in the MCU. Now, I do think that Moon Knight was disappointing, but it's not because Werewolf by Night didn't show up. It's just because it wasn't a very compelling show. I think there's a bit of an issue where some MCU fans can't just appreciate or even criticize a project based on its own merits. It's like they need cameos and interconnectivity in order for something to be seen as worthwhile. Who cares about Doctor Strange feeling unworthy of finding happiness and going on a journey of self-discovery because my stupid theory that the X-Men, the Fantastic Four, and all three Spider-Man were going to show up through portals and help him fight Mephisto didn't come to fruition. Not only do cameos and interconnectivity not make something inherently good, they can actively make it worse. To bring up the Jared Leto starring vehicle again, Morbius is a really good example of how cramming in a cameo that makes no sense can make a terrible movie somehow worse. Now listen, I like theorizing that Mephisto is going to show up in every single MCU project just as much as the next guy. I think it would be cool if they reveal in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania that the Fantastic Four have been hiding out in the quantum realm this whole time. But I'm not going to get upset if that doesn't come to fruition. It is a fool's errand to make speculation expectation. Watch movies for what they are, not what you wanted them to be. And lastly, some people have the opinion that Phase 4 was too funny. And yeah, I don't really get that either. The only two projects that really lean into humor are She-Hulk and Thor Love and Thunder. All the other projects definitely have humor, but they're not anything different from what we've seen in previous phases. And I would also just emphasize that humor isn't the problem with She-Hulk and Thor Love and Thunder. She-Hulk is a sitcom. I don't have an inherent problem with an MCU sitcom. The main problem with the show is that it just wasn't executed as well as it could have been. I would also argue that Love and Thunder isn't more goofy than Ragnarok. Maybe to some people, Ragnarok was a bit more balanced, but they're both borderline comedies. Much like the woke stuff, I'd warn against being just inherently against comedies in the MCU. MCU going full on comedy could be good. If you liked Thor Ragnarok, then you should agree with that. Well, okay, dude, why don't you tell us what the reason for the drop of quality has been, you may be asking yourself? Well, read the title, idiot. They're just doing too much. The truth is that the mastermind behind the MCU and the reason why it's been so consistent throughout the first 3 phases is Marvel Studios president Kevin Feige. He's been the executive producer on all of these movies and heavily involved in the creative process. The guy just knows what works in a comic book movie. But I think that Phase 4 just stretched him out too thin. At the height of the Infinity Saga, Marvel was putting out 3 movies a year, and even that's a lot to juggle. But during Phase 4? In 2021, we got 4 movies in Black Widow, Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings, Eternals, and Spider-Man No Way Home. And 5 shows in WandaVision, The Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki Season 1, What If Season 1, and Hawkeye. That's 9 projects that he juggled as opposed to 3. In 2022, we got 3 movies in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, Thor Love and Thunder, and Black Panther Wakanda Forever, 4 series in Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, She-Hulk Attorney at Law, and I Am Groot, and 2 TV specials in Werewolf by Night and the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special. There you have another 9 projects. And the truth is that Kevin Feige simply can't be heavily involved in all of them. It's simply too much. And I think that this is what has led to the varying levels of quality in Phase 4. It's the fact that individual directors and creative teams have been left to their own devices more often than not. Feige himself has stated that he was more hands-off in Multiverse of Madness, which allowed Sam Raimi to make a Raimi-ass movie. I'd be willing to bet that he was more hands-off with Thor Love and Thunder as well, which, for better or for worse, let Taika Waititi go all out with the goofy comedy he introduced in Ragnarok. When filmmakers are allowed to go all out and not have as much interference, it's going to lead to a wonderful diversity of creativity, but it's also going to lead to some varying levels of quality. The ultimate victim of this is the upcoming Blade movie. The movie is in development hell. Back in October of 2022, they didn't have a finalized script and the director had left the project. The star, Mahershala Ali, was also reportedly not happy with the status of the project. It was that bad, and the project had been announced in 2019. They've since hired a new director and a screenwriter to rewrite the script from scratch, but this type of stuff is not what Marvel is used to. This is some the CW made 9 seasons of the Flash TV show before the incompetent buffoons at DC could crap out a Flash movie kind of nonsense. This is some Lucasfilm is so bad at vetting their directors that they ended up firing the directors of Solo mid-production type of tomfoolery. Marvel usually runs a tight ship, and I just have to imagine that this is a project that fell through the cracks of Kevin Feige's strained leadership. Now listen, I really do appreciate a lot of what Kevin Feige being more hands-off has led to. Say what you will about Phase 4, but it is undoubtedly the most creative and unique phase so far. Projects like WandaVision, Werewolf by Night, Miss Marvel, and Moon Knight are wholly unique from one another. But it's simply not possible for Kevin Feige to exert quality control over all of it. Projects like Hawkeye, Loki, and Moon Knight are just not very good, and pile up when you consider the phase as a whole. All that being said, I don't think that quality is the only issue here. Yeah, that's dropped off, but I also just don't think that people can keep up with this many projects. 3 movies to watch a year really isn't all that overwhelming in my opinion. But 3 to 4 movies and multiple seasons of television is a lot. I obviously really like the MCU, so I'm down to watch all of it, but I think they're running the risk of burning out general audiences. There's obviously not a study on this, but anecdotally, I know a lot of people who used to keep up with all things MCU, but just don't want to watch that much content. Even if all of these shows were on the level of The Sopranos, I still think people would feel overwhelmed. And some of these projects are beginning to require you to watch previous installments in order for you to properly understand them. In the Multiverse of Madness, kind of requires you to have watched WandaVision in order to fully understand why Wanda went cray-cray. It's a good thing that WandaVision was really great and a bunch of people jumped on board, but are you going to have to have seen Miss Marvel in order to understand the Marvels? Because as much as I loved it, not a ton of people tuned into that show. I could see the people that don't watch the Disney Plus shows getting lost in the lore. Loki is probably the most important project of Phase 4, and there's a lot of people that just never bothered to check it out. And the final issue that I want to bring up is that there just isn't as much excitement for new Marvel projects as there used to be. I'm at the point where I don't heavily anticipate new Marvel stuff. Secret Invasion actually looks pretty great, but a new Marvel Disney Plus show is just another Tuesday at this point. The fact that I'm starting to lose hype for the MCU is an issue. Some amount of scarcity breeds excitement. The pauses between movies in the first 3 phases let us enjoy them more and primed us to yearn for the next one. And the unfortunate thing is that they aren't slowing down anytime soon. Phase 5 looks to be just as cluttered. They are moving full steam ahead on never having meaningful breaks between projects. And the ugly truth is that I think they need all of these projects. With the introduction of Disney Plus, I assume that the big wigs at Disney are demanding Marvel content. Aside from Marvel and Star Wars, there is nothing on Disney Plus when it comes to premium content. And until the day that Disney really starts diversifying their premium shows and stops having to rely on Marvel and Star Wars, I don't think that the MCU can scale back. Now, it's not all hopeless. Disney Plus has been trying to diversify their content a bit. They've tried out Willow and the National Treasure Show. They're making a Percy Jackson series that I'm really looking forward to. So at least they are making an active effort to not rely as much on just Star Wars and Marvel. And Kevin Feige is obviously a really smart guy. He obviously knows that the MCU has not been as well received. And with Bob Iger recently coming back as CEO of Disney, I also think that he'll be able to recognize that as well and give Kevin Feige the leeway to bring things back in order. But even if those decisions do end up coming to fruition, we're probably going to have to sit through an entire Phase 5 before we even see the effects of them. But anyways, what are your thoughts on all of this? Maybe you loved Phase 4 and think it's the best one yet. Maybe you absolutely hated it and are just completely done with the MCU. Am I wrong? I mean, that's never been the case, but sure, you can make your feeble attempt at argumentation in the comments down below. And also while you're down there, please be sure to like the video, ring the bell, and subscribe to the channel. And yeah, bye.